After rewatching all previous Spider-Man live-action movies to be prepared for the multiverse wreaking havoc on our Earth, I was both psyched and worried. The anticipation was high, but with great expectations may come great disappointment. So does the movie deliver? Hi there, it's Micha. Join me and you will find out more. Sure, I rewatched all previous Spider-Man live-action movies, at least those where he was in the title, and I even wrote all the reviews already. But sure enough, the first one to make it to my channel is the review for the newest entry. I mean, you gotta try to keep it topical, right? The rest will follow soon though. Before we start, in the main part of this review I will only discuss major plot points that were already shown in the trailer, so no spoilers. After the rating I will offer you a closer look though, when we will enter the spoiler zone, with an appropriate warning of course. Let's look at the synopsis. After J. Jonah Jameson spilled the beans and revealed Peter's superhero identity to the world...
Here's the real blockbuster. Brace yourselves, you might want to sit down.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker.
What the...
His short moment of harmony, the 1 week where MJ became his girlfriend and found out his secret...
Ever since I got bit by that spider, I've only had 1 week where my life has felt normal. That was when you found out.
Was over. But that is not his only problem, because the revealing video also comes with the blame of being responsible for Mysterio's death.
Spider-Man attacked me for some reason. He has an army of weaponized drones, Stark technology.
Are you sure you want to commence the drone attack?
Do it! Execute them all!
As the world neither knows that he was a villain, nor that the video was altered, and Peter has no proof, half of humanity hates him now. And the blame also extends to his friends, who are denied their dream colleges, being rejected just by association with the now controversial crime fighter. If the world just would not have learned about his alter ego. But wait, wasn't there a sorcerer fighting by his side when they faced Thanos? Why not ask him to make the world forget? Which Doctor Strange is just happy to help with. But wait again, the whole world?
Wait, everyone? Can't some people still know?
That's not how the spell works.
So MJ's gonna forget about everything we've ever been through?
Stop tampering with the spell.
Oh my god, Ned, he's my best friend. Oh, my Aunt May should really know.
Stop talking.
After tweaking the spell a few times on the fly, ultimately changing it to only people who knew Peter's identity remembering it, the magic was about to get out of control. So Steven?
I'm sorry to bother you, sir.
Please, we saved half the universe together. I think we're beyond you calling me sir.
Okay, Steven.
That feels weird, but I'll allow it.
Has no other way as to shut it down.
What just happened?
Unfortunately, it was too late to contain it completely. So now everyone across the multiverse who knows or knew the real identity was summoned into our plane of existence. But only some of them were able to make their way through to us. For now.
Hello, Peter.
Now Peter has to battle villains from other realities, from alternate universes, on top of still being hated by half of a planet. And with law enforcement considering his incarceration.
Listen, I did not kill Mysterio. The drones did.
The drones that are yours.
This is how far trailers revealed the epic story of the new Spidey flick. You can see that fans are burning with anticipation. Who will join the fight and on which sides? How many cameos on top of the already known appearances can we expect? Were we hyped too much, or will the movie overdeliver? To get the most pressing question out of the way, the movie hits its mark and every fan should try to see it on the big screen, if they feel safe enough to do so. True, there were some weaknesses in the story. I would have liked 2 scenes to play out differently, and I'm curious how the main twist will be handled in the future MCU entries. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a popcorn movie in all the best regards. But honestly, when I first walked out of the theater, I wasn't sure how I feel about the movie. Did it overperform or underdeliver? I had many great laughs, fantastic wow moments, tears in my eyes and much more. But also some story elements felt very simplistic, while others almost looked entirely constructed. So I guess I can deduct that the movie almost exactly delivered what I was expecting, which was a lot, so all is fine. It was enough to really enjoy it, and I will share some of the reasons for it, as well as a few detractors, in the spoiler zone, as most of those facts are closely tied to things I don't want to just blurt out. The spoiler-free take is this. While the action and fun were great and the story epic, there was a lot going on, and while the lead characters were sufficiently developed over the 2.5-hour runtime, some of these supporting characters were not. This was especially apparent when it came to the Sandman and the Lizard, who are reduced to their animated forms, quite literally, as they are only shown in their human forms in one scene each. This could have been for monetary reasons, as Thomas Hayden Church and Rhys Ifans were also not part of the main credits, or they were just not available for the entire shoot. As they were also the only villain characters who, in the original movies from which they were taken, were not dead at the end, this might also be a reason. Because they never explicitly addressed at what point in time the living characters were brought over to our universe, while the dead ones all were obviously taken moments before their death. It may be that the characters were not fleshed out more, as then this topic would have required more explanation, which either they hadn't time for or, more likely, would have created some logical issues, which I will touch on in the spoiler zone. In any case, they only dedicated enough attention to some of the villains, which also makes sense as the producers also needed to tell the larger story, and due to the number of things and characters thrown in, time was already an issue as it is. I also hope to see more of J.K. Simmons' J. Jonah Jameson in this movie. Maybe the only character that I imagine to be the same actor across the whole multiverse. Unfortunately, he only appeared another 2 or 3 times on TV, and other than that was more a social commentary, as he obviously was a caricature of Alex Jones, to the point that he also peddled his pills during the broadcast. Fortunately, the movie stopped there and didn't try too hard to mirror current politics, though you could do a lot of interpretation work when it comes to the country being split in half between Spidey supporters and Mysterio followers. This is showcased in a nice side gag, where all 3 teachers we know from the 2 previous MCU Spider-Man flicks return for a cameo, with Martin Starr and J.B. Smoove, who were chaperones on the trip Far From Home, being fans of Peter, building him some kind of a shrine at school, while the coach, played again by Hannibal Buress, as in Homecoming, blames him for Mysterio's death. In a funny way, which is especially remarkable as back then, he couldn't care less that Captain America was disgraced. He still used his promo videos in class.
Thank you, Captain. Pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever. I have to show these videos. It's required by the state. Let's do it.
A sign of how people's minds have changed in recent years. As that topic was only lightly touched in that scene, we were not pulled out of the movie's reality too much. Which is good, as though I have my own very strong personal views on things, I prefer the MCU to be a space that everyone can enjoy and in which no one feels unwelcome. But back to the main point. Ultimately, the act of balancing storytelling, character development and fan service was the tricky part, which they managed well enough. As mentioned before, some parts of the story seemed simplified and even rushed, some elements rather thin, but changing the balance might have brought the whole construct down. So even if things are not perfectly balanced all the time, they are working. Of course, the trailers also tried to trick us a bit, with some characters obviously being digitally removed. More on that later. But even some small scenes with little impact were different in the final movie, which likely was not on purpose, but just an editing decision. You can see that very well when Wong's character leaves after Peter asked Strange to change the past, while he was very much opposed in the trailer.
Don't cast that spell. It's too dangerous. Fine. I won't.
Implying more guilt on Strange's conscience. In the finished movie, Wong just asked them to keep him out of it, whatever they do. And after seeing Peter and MJ swinging around so much in the trailer, I loved the joke to find out that she really hates it, getting sick of it and never wants to do it again. Which of course she has to suffer through again immediately afterwards. Hilarious. They also tried to trick us in the trailer regarding the time the story takes place, showing the sanctum covered in snow, suggesting the movie takes place partly in winter. While this was only due to a magical incident, where a blizzard got in through a portal. A red herring which I kind of anticipated. However, each Marvel property is currently very hesitant to reveal when they exactly take place. The movie starts right after Far From Home ended, which we only knew took place sometime after the blip, likely a few months, but also likely under a year. Curious to see if that serves a specific purpose in the near future. I was a bit disappointed that there was no real post-credit sequence, just a teaser for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Nice treat, but not what I was looking for at the end of a Marvel movie. Still, that movie looks very promising. By the way, in a nice in-joke you can see graffiti saying Ditko in one scene, paying homage to Steve Ditko, one of Spidey's creators who died in 2018. Not sure if the dude sitting in the donut store at the end, who looked a little bit like Stan Lee, was supposed to be a nod to him, or if that was someone else I just didn't know, or isn't meant to mean anything at all. Thanks to my sister Angie for pointing that out. Okay, on to the rating now that I have exhausted all spoiler-free details. With great fan service and some strong characters, surprises, great fights and special effects and overall fun, there was also an unnecessarily mean sequence I will discuss later, and the underlying feeling that the overarching story is a bit simple. This all still makes for a great movie, a movie which, slightly better balanced, might have even been excellent or even one of the best movies ever. For me, it was caught between being great and almost excellent, which translates into 8.5 points, which is still a top score I don't hand out lightly. The acting was great throughout the movie, and especially those playing the villains had visibly fun revisiting their roles, though no one more than Willem Dafoe, who even cranked it up a notch from his previous appearances. And his fun with it directly translates into our entertainment.
Old Norman and the Goblin are further down the line, and they have a few more tricks up their sleeve.
So, this movie comes highly recommended, though I guess it will also do fine on its own. Last time I checked, it hit the $1 billion mark at the box office after about 10 days. Nice work! So, if you don't want to get spoiled but enjoyed the video so far,
thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
If you don't mind spoilers or have already watched the movie, please follow me into the spoiler zone. Let's start with one of the biggest spoiler of them all. Aunt May dies. It was a shock to everyone, and I don't hate the movie for it, as it had the wanted impact on me as the audience and on Peter, fighting for the first time with rage and hate in his heart. What bugged me was this. We saw how hard she was hit by Green Goblin's glider. No way she was unharmed. I expected her to die there in his arms, but she got up again. I then expected her to just hide her wounds, but the scene played out so long that I bought into her being fine. Just to see her then break down and die. Again, I guess it achieved the desired impact, but it was also unnecessarily cruel towards the audience. Expecting her to die, then betray us while we suffer through a phase of being prepared for the shock, just to be then tricked and punished after we finally believed the director it was safe. It really felt like they broke my trust, like a breach of the unspoken contract between the movie and the audience, not to be unnecessarily cruel in playing with our feelings. This triple jerk around felt so unwarranted that it still bothers me, but this might be just me. A lot of rumors turned out to be true, like Tobey Maguire also appearing, Andrew Garfield having a redeeming moment for not saving Gwen in his movie, but catching MJ in this one, which surprisingly ended in a very awkward moment instead of a celebratory one. Also, the online whispers around Charlie Cox making an appearance as Daredevil in his lawyer persona were correct, officially opening the door to bring in the heroes of a Netflix TV shows into the MCU. Well, technically they always were part of the MCU, so let's say back into the larger MCU. There were also some great reveals, like Strange not being the Sorcerer Supreme anymore, on a technicality, as he was gone 5 years due to the blip. This honor now lies with Wong, something that obviously changed the power dynamic between them, though Steven still seems to struggle with coming to terms with it. We also saw an epic fight between Peter and Doctor Strange, as Steven, and this is the main plot point they only hinted to in the trailers, wants to send the villains who were drawn into our universe straight back to their home, where most of them will die as they were summoned here only moments before their untimely ends.
It's their fate. I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah, me too.
Don't.
Peter, on the other hand, wants to heal them first, as almost no one was bad by choice. They all somehow fell victim to outer circumstances. If those can be fixed, the villains are no longer evil and have a second chance. Not buying into it and not willing to risk any more damage to our world, Steven fights Peter to stop him from trying.
Look, there has to be another way!
There isn't.
A fight that, to all our surprise, Spidey won. Actually, I shouldn't have been that surprised, because just moments earlier we saw Peter crawling back into his body after being soul punched out of it by Doctor Strange. Something that no human should be able to do. Binding him in a web and taking away his magic rings, it was enough to trap the sorcerer in his own pocket dimension for a while. He does return though at the most convenient moment to help save the day, without much explanation, which is one of those more rushed story issues I referred to earlier. Nice side joke and opening up new potential for the future. After mentioning that his grandmother told him his bloodline is akin to magic, Peter's friend Ned receives Doctor Strange's rings and is actually able to open portals with them. Something that, according to Stephen's facial expression, he should not be able to do. So there really is magic in his family. The movie basically brings in all the villains from previous Spider-Man live-action movies, except for Topher Grace's Venom, a character apparently universally hated by fans. I will touch on this in my review for Spider-Man 3. Check it out when it is uploaded, likely later this month. But they don't let Venom out completely and finally explain the end credit scene from Venom Let There Be Carnage.
What the hell is that?
Oh, that's just a towel.
There, after telling his host that symbionts exist with a conscience stretching across the whole multiverse, they end up suddenly appearing in another reality, our MCU world. At that point back then, I thought a misfire in Venom would just have brought them over, that his connection to other versions of Venom would allow him to travel across universes. Of course, now we know that he was also summoned by the spell, as another version of him, the Venom from Spider-Man 3, knew Peter's identity. And that was also the reason that he was sent back by Stephen's spell at the end of a movie. More on that in a moment. It took me a while though to put that together, as I already explained the Venom end gag to myself in the wrong way. And they never really lay it out for us that plainly, which I appreciate, as a bit of legwork to understand the story should always be done by the audience. I would have wished and assumed though that they keep Tom Hardy's Venom in our universe. He did leave a piece of the goo behind, but I would have preferred him to be staying. But more on that a bit later. With Flash Thompson being a superhero in the comics, mainly tied to the Venom symbiote, maybe this is where this small leftover of Venom will end up. What I was hoping for and therefore missing in the final movie were additional villains we haven't seen in the two prior franchises. And additional Peter Parkers, who were brought over to our realm as they, being Peter Parker, of course also knew the real identity. I do understand though that there was no time to deal with even more villains and Spider-Mans. Spider-Man? Whatever. There was a lack of time for proper character development as it was, so I get it. And they did address it with all the silhouettes of creatures trying to cross over at the end, when Doctor Strange was almost not able to stop them.
What's happening?
They're starting to come through, and I can't stop them.
Still would have loved to see more than just the known Spideys and villains. At least they referenced a Black Spider-Man as being possible, so chances are they will also bring in Miles Morales from Into the Spider-Verse in the future. Another big irritator to me was the fact that they never really explained the logic of when in their timeline characters were taken. As mentioned before, all the villains that died were taken moments earlier, but Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was visibly aged appropriately. And though they didn't comment on it, I assume Andrew Garfield's Spidey also was brought over from the current moment in time. However, Sandman was starting in our world as already turned good, helping Peter before he turned his back on him, as he just wants to get back home as quickly as possible, suggesting that he was taken from the timeline at the end of Spider-Man 3. Otherwise, as he is motivated to get back to his daughter, he would have had the chance to do so for the last 18 years, with Spider-Man 3 taking place in 2007 and No Way Home, after the blip, sometime in or after 2023. They never touch on that, but I guess there would have been easy ways to fix it. They just seem to have not even spent much thought on it, rather deciding to not dive much into his backstory. A bit disappointing was also that the other two Spider-Men only reference events we have seen in those movies, as if time stood still since then, which it obviously did not, visibly. Why not throw in some great fights and villains, just by name, to show what we could have seen if those franchises would have continued? It also felt a bit lazy on the screenwriter's side, on top of wasted opportunity. I'm happy though that Tobey Maguire, though heavily wounded, didn't die, because that would have really pissed me off, even though he still acts in that weird way he developed at the end of Spider-Man 3. More on that in that separate review. Looking back and knowing that he didn't do much on the big screen since then, I feel a bit worried and hope he's fine. We all expected a Spider-Man reunion, or let's better call it a team-up, especially since characters were digitally removed from the trailers. It made for some great fights and visuals in the finished movie, but could you imagine our surprise if they would have removed villains as well, on both sides? Imagine that shot with Doc Ock, who was cured and helped out the heroes later, fighting on their side already then. And the Sandman not switching sides, fighting also on the good side, with some other villains, maybe freshly crossed over, on the other side. That would have been even more epic. Thinking of being cured, one thought still stayed with me. In almost every Spider-Man movie, the bad guy comes to their senses at the very end. You could consider the fact that Peter sends them home after they are cured, and them being taken moments before their deaths, as a way to retroactively explain that change of behavior, instead of attributing it to Peter being so convincing in every movie and every iteration so that the bad guys changed their mind. That would be quite cynical, still sealing their fates besides all the efforts put into healing them, but would still uphold the continuity of the previous movies. On the other hand, maybe they give us glimpses into those universes going forward, or even reanimate one or both of them in some form. But let's assume the healed villains really get a second chance. It sure would then fix this misalignment with the comics, in which the villains almost never die, but get into prison or become anti-heroes and later redeem themselves completely. Would be interesting to see how their stories are now changed, assuming the villains have now taken their second chance and survived. Maybe they even continue those franchises. One opportunity would be to finally film the cancelled third installment of The Amazing Spider-Man, which fans are demanding for years and which now would actually make sense. As Venom returned to his universe, maybe that is Andrew Garfield's reality and we may see them face off before teaming up, obviously. So many opportunities blown wide open. But oh dear, I'm running long again. So let's get to the last and biggest reveal of them all. At the very end, Doctor Strange changed reality so that everyone who knows Peter's identity would forget he ever existed, including Doctor Strange himself. At a time where Stephen was not able to keep the other villains from crossing over anymore, Peter suggested that solution. I know that was meant to be his hero sacrifice moment, where he leaves his whole life behind, losing all his friends and connections to other people. However, I would have preferred that idea would come from the sorcerer as the only solution to stop it, not as the first idea Peter came up with. I am sure it was the only possibility, I still would have liked to hear it. It would not have taken away from his sacrifice in any way. It would have just made the scene more real and believable, and less random. This opened up a ton of questions in my head, to which we will likely have to wait for a few months or even years to get the answers. And there are some situations that will be tough to explain. I can imagine the screenwriters of a next Spider-Man movie cursing out the authors of this one for leaving them to fix it. And are all Peter Parkers affected? I guess not, as otherwise he would have let the other two Peters know. It appeared to be limited to our universe's Peter, but you can never be sure. With Happy and the world forgetting Peter, the whole storyline from Far From Home, building him up to be the new Tony Stark, seemed to be abandoned now. Including the moment Happy recognizes Tony's spark in him, while he was working on creating his new suit. But mainly, what happens with the gaps in the minds of all people around him? We see him standing at Aunt May's grave, talking to Happy. Keep in mind that the past was not changed, but that everyone just doesn't remember him anymore. How does Happy make sense of meeting May through Spider-Man, without remembering her having a nephew? How do MJ and Ned fill the Peter-shaped memory gap of fighting with Spidey on the Statue of Liberty? How does that come about? That will be interesting to see. I recently had another thought on this though. If only people in our universe forgot him, maybe there is someone who wasn't in our universe at that moment, and will remember him or the news reports everyone else forgot. For instance, where was Wong, Strange's associate, leaving for? Does he know how to travel through the multiverse? Was he someplace out of reach and still remembers? Maybe he was going to visit Shang-Chi. Maybe that movie happened in parallel. Could the other dimension in Shang-Chi technically be considered another universe? So everyone who was fighting there might still remember? We will find out. Might not be Wong or them, but someone surely will remember him, won't they? An even bigger question. Did everyone just forget him, like repressed memory, and it may be recoverable? Or is it really erased, with no way back? And what was actually done? Strange says one time that no one will remember him, and then that it will be as if he never existed. It was highly implied that reality wasn't changed, as that would be too dangerous after all that happened. So does that mean his birth certificate and digital trail is still there? It should, but then the video of Mysterio and J. Jonah Jameson would also be around, revealing him again. Jameson doesn't remember him, and we see him ask for Spidey to reveal himself, so something must have changed. As my sister Angie pointed out, Peter was carrying a book to study for the GEDs, so likely his name was erased from high school? Does he have to forge papers now to be back, or do they still exist? I was wondering if the next joke would be him taking on an alias name from another Spider-Man from the comics, but he still goes by Peter Parker when he introduces himself to MJ. I was even hoping for a quick, "Oh, you go to MIT too? See you around," but it didn't come, suggesting he really has to retake exams, reapply, or even has to forget about college, as he didn't exist anymore. Him renting a shitty apartment, still in New York, would suggest that much. One last thing. Regarding the apartment, a friend of mine suggested that this very much looks like the apartment building where Jessica Jones from the Netflix show lives. With those shows being reintroduced, that may be a very valid call-out. So, Paul, we will see. That's it, at long last. Did you like the movie? Was it overhyped for you? Did it hit the mark like it did for me, or was it over-delivering? Let me know in the comments. Okay, as always, if you enjoyed this video, like it and feel free to share it with your friends. And why not subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any future video. Make sure to also hit the notification bell to get a heads up whenever a new video is posted. So much for now, see you next time and thanks for watching.